Well, it's a little bit later in the afternoon, so I've gotten rid of this hot sun beating down on the garden flowers here. We've got two more verses to cover in the Song of the Sannyasin by Swami Vivekananda. And today he says, "Few only know the truth. The rest will hate and laugh at thee, great one, but pay no heed. Go thou, the free, from place to place and help them out of darkness, Maya's veil, without the fear of pain or the search for pleasure. Go beyond them both, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om." And of course that first sentence is one of my big complaints with the beloved about this here spiritual life. The fact that there are so few who have experienced these truths, who know these truths firsthand, enlightened souls. I always had this idea that for this game to be even remotely fair, I tell Mother, I'm like, you should have an enlightened soul on every city block in every city in the world. And then maybe that would level the odds out. But as it is, to have one in so few who are able to see these things, it's really a calling. The world could really use a few of us to dedicate ourselves and to make the commitment to live this way and to know these things firsthand, to be a knower of the divine. The rest will hate and laugh at thee, great one, but pay no heed, because it is kind of an odd experience or an odd practice to go looking inward for the truth of the universe. It is kind of a funny thing to deny yourself pleasures and to humble yourself in the face of the world. These are odd behaviors. They are counter to the lower nature, which is always in fear and always seeking for pleasure. And that's really what he says. Go from place to place. Love people. Give them a hand. Lift them out of the darkness that they're in by being a human being, by hearing their troubles, by being willing to do things to help them in their troubles, by really feeling yourself in them, to see that oneness. That great sage, Sri Nisargadatta, he says when an ordinary man sees someone suffering, he sees someone suffering. He says when enlightened souls see someone suffering, they suffer, for they know that suffering to be their own, that it is themselves alone that exist within that person. That's what it is to love your neighbor, when you see your own self in your neighbor's experience. And your compassion is built on seeing yourself in that situation. And the love then is authentic and genuine. And the offering comes without ego and without requirement of payment, without restitution. This is the secret that he's talking about here. Going and feeling nothing about whether you're praised or blamed, whether you're laughed at or encouraged. Because it's a dream. It's all your own making. This world is your own creation. The fear of pain or the search for pleasure, that's something we've become so accustomed to, we don't even realize how enslaved we are. I remember as a kid hearing the scriptures call me a slave, and I was like, what are you talking about? I can do whatever I want, I'm free. Because that's our definition of freedom, isn't it? To be enslaved to your will, that's our definition of freedom. It's like, I want it, I can do it. But are you in charge of what you want? That determines whether you're free or not. As a great, what was his name? My minister when I was in high school, Neil Gallagher, he said to me, you're not free to say yes to something until you're free to say no to it. Which means if you can't successfully control yourself and say no, then your yes doesn't mean anything, because it's not a yes of choice. It's a yes of bondage. So when we come to see that and we test our ability to say no and yes to things equally, that's sadhana. And that reveals our bondage. That reveals the fact that doing what we want, is really just another name for slavery. So he's bringing that out. Go beyond them both, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. So spiritual life is an invitation to freedom. Self-control is an invitation to freedom, to losing your bonds, to being able to decide what you want and taking it, because you're able to say no or yes as you desire, and not as the body is driving you or the mind is convincing you or habits have formed in you, but because you are a man in control of yourself, or woman. So be free. That's the invitation tonight. Be free.